hello. Like Ashley said, we made it. We're at our last session. We did it. Everybody have a good JNUC so far? Good? Awesome. Welcome, everybody. This is how to keep your CISO happy with data and alerts. My name is Todd Clark. I'm the Senior IT Support Specialist at GetWell. Joining me today is our, world-class and esteemed CISO, Jeremy Lynch. Jeremy, say hi.
Hey everybody, my name is Jeremy Lynch. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at GetWell. Delighted to be here once again with Todd and show you all the fun stuff that he enables all of my teams to pull off.
We're really excited to be back this year to give you some new updates on some tips and tricks on things that we're doing at GetWell. If you're just hearing about GetWell for the first time, we are a global digital health company with more than 20 years of experience improving patient engagement through partnerships with some of the most progressive hospitals and health systems in the world. We use digital technology to improve the healthcare experience for patients, their families, and clinicians. So let's go through what we have in store for today's session. We'll do a little quick recap on last year's session, a little update, some updated numbers and timelines for those of you playing along at home or here in person, which will then beg the question, why isn't the clicker working? That's not the question. Why are we here again? Why do we need to be here? Why follow up? What else is there to discuss? Well, let's get there. And then Jeremy and I will discuss, maybe somewhere, there we go. Jeremy and I will discuss some of the security decisions that have led us to where we are today, our move to macOS at GetWell, our decision to keep our users as standard users and not admins, and then maybe some security tracking tools that we use that you can take back. And then we'll do a little bit of a palate cleanser, a fun little break, a little story time maybe. Try and embarrass Jeremy up here on stage. Next, we'll dive into the ways that we're using Jamf Pro to track certain policies, gather data, and show off some sections of a custom dashboard we use. And as the puppy says, you have the best data. Let's do something fun with it. And lastly, hopefully time permitting, we'll do some Q&A. In our last session, how to keep your CISO happy with automation. We discussed several topics on our journey to automating a lot of the repetitive day-to-day tasks within Jamf Pro. We introduced you to GetWell in our history with Jamf Pro, where we were, where we wanted to get, and the processes we put in place to get there. We went over, it's getting there, maybe. It's gonna go like 7 clicks here. There we go. We went over how we planned out and implemented standards across everything within our Jamf Pro. We discussed how using these standards led us to move forward with the automations that we had envisioned. Then we discussed those automations and our deployments and how we transformed the user experience quite literally out of the box. And now we're able to automate software updates and OS updates using auto package and other tools like Nudge. We wrapped up by discussing hardening our systems by using the macOS Security Compliance Project and the CIS benchmarks, and how implementing those have allowed us to secure our place as a market leader in our industry. If you haven't seen it, obviously I recommend it. It's packed with valuable tips and tricks that can be used by just about everyone. Here's a link to Jamf's blog about it, a YouTube link, and a QR code if you'd like to check that session out. Go ahead and watch it. No, it's fine. I heard the music. That's cool. So let's take a look at some of those updates from last year's presentation. Last year I discussed how it took nearly 8 months for us to make the move from macOS Catalina to macOS Big Sur. Then with the help of the amazing tool Nudge, in conjunction with our Jamf Pro, we made the move to macOS Monterey in less than 45 days. This last upgrade cycle, we tried to meet or exceed that, Jeremy even tried to pressure me into an over-under 21-day time frame. And while we didn't meet that, we did accomplish this this year in less than 30 days, this time with less of a head start and fewer testers. So it sounds like some big changes are coming with declarative device management, which sound very cool. But at this point, I will sing the praises of Nudge to anyone who will listen. So why are we here? Sound cool? No. Why are we here? Jamf Nation. You and the Mac admins community and a whole are amazing. And after last year's session, we received such amazing feedback and numerous questions from all of you. We realized many of you are interested in the tools that we were using, how we gather data, and how we act upon it. And with all the great questions and possibilities to discuss our solutions, we just had to come back and show off some more of these tips and tricks to you, and hope that everyone in Jamf Nation can make their deployments better and see how we leverage data in our Jamf Pro to improve the IT support experience. That's very much a tongue twister.
Yep.
Yeah. And most importantly, the user experiences. So let's start with a demonstration of one of our basic alerts. When Apple dropped support for some models last year before the upgrade to Ventura, we identified a problem in our workflow. We needed to deploy a lot of computers really quickly. But we are a small team. Our workforce is mostly remote, and yes, we do still use automated device enrollment. So sending computers out was something that we're used to, and we're fine with doing that. But our problem was that we didn't always know when the computer was going to be delivered and subsequently enrolled in Jamf Pro. And users, while they are all wonderful in their own unique way, are not always the best about following up on that. They don't always tell you when those computers arrive. So we could definitely just constantly check the FedEx tracking. That's not really good use of anyone's time, and I don't think Jeremy would like it if I just was refreshing FedEx tracking all day long. But the solution we needed some way for Jamf Pro to let our IT team know that a computer had been enrolled properly, so we'd know that the user had it. And I just have to ask if your spidey sense is tingling at all. Webhooks from Jamf Pro would be perfect for this, or so I thought. Unfortunately, the tests and trials that I ran, they didn't play nicely with our alert system without a lot of data manipulation by an extremely talented developer, and that is not me. Sorry.
It's not me either.
So that wasn't the solution. Maybe the Jamf Pro API was the way to go. And spoiler alert, it can be, and is a wonderful tool for generating data, and I'll show some of that later, but not for this example. The solution then was actually a custom curl command. This command runs from a script within a policy, and that sends some JSON via a post command to our alerts catcher, which then has another piece of a script format the alert and send it down to our alert channel. And so this is now the last policy that runs in our DEP notify script, and we're alerted when a new computer enrolls into our Jamf Pro. And I'll show you some additional examples of these types of alerts later on, but before that I do want to talk about security, and Jeremy wants to get some words in too. So I'm gonna ask Jeremy some questions. We're just gonna freestyle this, I think, a little bit. We're gonna talk about some decisions around security and how those were made and discussed. So stay tuned for the alerts for later, but for now, I was wondering, Jeremy, if you could tell us a little bit about GetWell's decision to move to macOS as the primary.
Well, as most of you know, why wouldn't you want to move to Mac if everybody else at the shop has Windows? Nobody wants to maintain Windows systems. It really boiled down to us that we're a very Linux-heavy company, and the vast majority of our user base could not use a standard Linux desktop system to be productive and do what they wanted to do. So our next best solution to that was to move into Mac, which enabled us to be able to get the security baselines that we need for all the certifications and attestations that we need to deal with globally.
And what about some of the macOS and security, macOS security and system hardening things that you've been pushing, both my team and the rest of your teams?
Yeah, so on the hardening side, we're following along the CIS benchmarks. Basically, Todd runs, or I run the script that then outputs anything that may have gone out of sync with what our baseline is. Todd then works to create some fancy thing in Jamf. I am not a Jamf person, so I use the wrong terminology all the time. But he creates some kind of a policy in there, gets that all fixed, and we're all back into it. The other aspect that we try to also work on is anything that's a disastig that can be related to how our workforce is actually utilizing our system. That's pretty much it.
All right, and our users are all standard users versus admins. Was there a thought process behind that, or was it just normal users don't need to be?
I'm of the firm belief that 90% of employees don't need to be anything but a standard user. There's very little that most people do in their day-to-day that actually requires an elevated access. And if you want to follow least privilege principles, that is one way to really enable that across your user base.
And lastly, would you mind sharing, and I know the answer, but would you mind sharing with everyone here some of the other security tools and sources that we use for data and alerts within our environment? I don't want, you don't have to get all the details, but maybe just, an overall.
Yeah, so some of the tools that we're utilizing that helps either enable the alerts that Todd's producing from Jamf or gives more enriched data points. One of our most recent additions is a tool called Ploy. They were the first company that actually was able to detect something that I've been testing for the last 2-ish years at my company to see if any of our security tools would actually catch this specific scenario where I logged into my Google Drive account on a NAS at my house and was syncing all of my policies and procedures down, and even Google did not alert that this was a fishy activity. The first scan from Ploy, they basically caught it immediately, said, hey, there is data being downloaded into a device that we don't have registered, we don't understand, and it was really eye-opening and a great point for us to be able to control even more of the data that we're trying to worry about.
Yeah, so Ploy is a SaaS management tool. It's used to locate shadow IT apps and, among other things, assistant offboarding. It ties right into our Google Workspace. And yeah, that first scan, it finds this tool, and we're like, what is this going on? We dig in, and our own Jeremy had been testing the rest of the security tools, and this was the first one to find it. So I've been very impressed with the data that tool has been able to generate. And so I'm going to show you some cool ways to get some alerts out of your Jamf Pro, but always just be aware that there are going to be tons of other tools out there that you can use to generate that type of data to find information that you're looking for. And thank you, Jeremy, for keeping it PG, or even G, I think. I don't even think you got to the PG level.
I didn't stumble at all.
Last year when we recorded our session, Jeremy may have set the record for the amount of curse words in a JNUC presentation. I'm pretty sure that there was at one point, if you watch last year's session, it will cut back to me, I am beet red, because I've been laughing so hard at the stream that just happened. It was pretty funny. But anyways, data is everywhere, and we made it through. All right, let's go. Let's talk about data. I teased it a little earlier. Let's talk about a little more. Another little roadmap to keep things going. There are 4 areas that we found useful that I'm going to share with you today. I'm sure there are more, but I got to save some in case we decide to do a part 3 next year in Nashville. The first is around the temporary timed admin access and the alert that we use for that. And then next I'm going to talk about the usage and tracking of HomeBrew for our users. And then I'm going to share a little sneak peek at our data on demand dashboard. Todd's Dodd. That makes me laugh. I think that's funny. Lastly, I'll show some of our daily plus or multiple times per day alerts that we use and how we use our Jamf Pro server and the Jamf API to generate the data for those alerts. All right. Temporary timed admin access alert. Another long, almost tongue twister.
Mouthful.
As previously mentioned, our users are standard users, and we heavily utilize self-service. However, at times there are software configurations that require admin access to set up. Looking at you, Docker. We need a way to track the times when temporary admin access is granted to a user. So I created an alert, and here's how it all works together. I did start with the make me admin script from Jamf, so if you've not seen that, I would definitely check that out. But as I mentioned earlier, I am not a great developer, so I had to rewrite most of the script so that it makes sense to me. We have 2 policies in our workflow, and it goes like this. We add a computer into a smart group, which grants access to the elevate policy in self-service. The user clicks it, and their account is elevated to admin for a set time period. For us, it's 10 minutes. Second part of the script runs an API call to the Jamf API to remove the computer from that static group, and then creates a launch daemon to run the second policy by trigger. That second policy is affectionately referred to as blue shell. And 10 minutes later, blue shell runs and normalizes the user. Users are informed of all of this through Jamf alert, through Jamf helper pop-ups. How do we track this, though? Well, we could watch user policy logs. Has anybody ever done that? How exciting is that? Refresh, refresh, refresh. No, it's not. It's just more bad uses of our time. We could send a message to the user. Hey, did you use it? No? Well, we knew what worked. So another custom curl command running a post webhook to our alert catcher and back down to our alerts channel, and now we have an alert for the user elevating themselves to admin. This works really well in a one-off situation. There's more of a last resort, but it's not really sustainable for us to continually elevate users upon request or approval. That just gets old. Okay, can I? Yes?
No.
So we need a better way. We needed a way for our users, especially our developers and our engineers, to always have access to the software they needed without giving up our security principles and without a flood of tickets coming in for admin access. At GetWell, we allow those users to use HomeBrew. HomeBrew is a package manager that easily allows you to install software from the command line. Now using HomeBrew in conjunction with self-service, our users' needs were being met, mostly. Some software installed by HomeBrew requires admin access to move the files and even the application itself into place, which means we're back to needing the elevate option. And not exactly what we want, but we have a different way. So we add the user into an AD group. We use AD more of convenience than necessity. This way, if a user's computer is replaced, they can get back up and running quickly without having to wait for us to add them to a Jamf group. The user logs in to self-service, installs Brew, recon runs, an extension attribute tells us that Brew is now installed, and the computer is added to a smart group. Computers in that smart group get, anyone? You done this before? Anyone? A sudoers file. A sudoers file is pushed down from Jamf Pro, and if we ever need to update that file, and we do, We make the change in Jamf Pro, we push the new file out, replaces the old file. This is a portion of that file up here. I'm not going to share the exact contents because it is customized for us, and I don't think that our CISO would want the world knowing what's open. But definitely search Jamf Nation for ideas on a sudoers file that will work for you, or if you'd like to reach out to me personally later, I can try and maybe point you in the right direction to get you going with that. We keep Brew up to date with a weekly policy that runs. It runs as the user with the Brew update, upgrade, cask upgrade, cleanup, and doctor in case there are issues. And this is just another automation to tie into last year's presentation that saves us a lot of time. For data and tracking, we do this within Jamf Pro with another extension attribute, what is installed by Brew. We have software approval process, as I'm sure all of you do. We run regular audits and to ensure compliance within those. But now every computer record includes the version of Brew installed, what has been installed by Brew, if anything. And then this is also tracked in something that I mentioned earlier, our data on demand dashboard. So let me show you that. We all love Jamf Pro. It's probably why most of us are here. I think we can all agree that the dashboard features are generally great, but there are some of us who like to look at data a little bit differently. And maybe rather than looking at individual computer records, you want the 50-foot pulled back version of your entire fleet. And I am one of those people. And I would also like to, again, maybe for the 10th or 11th or 25th time today, I'm not a developer. I'm also not a graphic designer. I'm not a web designer or anything in that realm. I am someone who can fumble around in Python. I can create functions and API calls that will parse data into bar charts and charts and tables. So that's what I did. And this is more of a working prototype than anything close to finished, but I think you'll find some of it pretty cool. The work is done in Dash, though Jeremy keeps pushing me towards Django. We'll see. His dashboard is way cooler than mine, so I may have to do that anyways. It's important to note, though, that you'll need to find out what data you want to work with first, because if you don't know what data you want to work with, why do this at all? I base my graphs and tables mostly on extension attributes, both custom and standard. And then I use this pretty generic, though highly reusable function to make API calls into the Jamf API, convert the data into something more visually appealing, and then I ooh and ah when it shows up on the screen because it worked. You could use something like this to track versions of software that you've deployed across your fleet, especially if it's not available in patch management or if it's an in-house app and you don't like using title editor. Sorry, title editor. With something like this, though, you can easily answer questions like, where do we stand on the latest macOS update? Or how many computers are missing the latest update to code 42? Or you can use it to visualize a table. I showed you the Brew installs earlier. So how many Macs have app X installed by Brew? There's a ton of possibilities with it. It's just kind of up to how, what you would want to look up and use for that. And then lastly, I do want to talk about our daily or multiple times per day alerts that we use. Maybe you need to be updated regularly on a Mac OS update that you pushed out, or you want to patch data, or you want patch data on a browser update. But unless you're watching your Jamf Pro constantly, refreshing for updates again, because that's great use of time, you'll probably miss some cool information that comes in. And all of these use the same type of Jamf API call to webhook creation to chat channel alert system that I've shown off earlier. So these might look sort of familiar. I like to keep tabs on our browser patching and status of our Mac OS in our environment. These alerts are scheduled to appear every 4 or 6 hours, so we constantly know where we're at. And here's an example of data that's being collected for computers that aren't checking in. There are 2 advanced computer searches. One's looking for no check-in 7+ days. One's looking for no inventory for 30+ days. combine the results into some JSON, run the curl command shown at the bottom, and then I can generate tickets from these type of alerts that come in to find missing Macs in our fleet. And again, all this data that I've shown today and everything that you can do with this comes from within your Jamf Pro via extension attributes, smart and static groups, and advanced computer searches. With some creativity, I'm positive that you can all definitely make things much cooler than me, and I hope you do that. So get all of the data, take it back, make cool things, and you see the smile on his face, you too can keep your CISO happy with data and alerts. And thank you all very much for coming today. Almost, ran a little short.
All right, we've got a couple questions here.
Okay.
How do you manage software updates when users don't have admin access?
A lot of what we do, a lot of that was discussed in our last session about automation. We do use auto package within that. We have automated, all of our updates happen on restart. So we have a tool that automates our restarts. If users don't restart once every 10 days, they get nagged by our old naggy tool. Definitely reach out to me directly or watch.
OS updates specifically is what I'm asking about.
Oh,
Require admin credentials. They don't.
not with Nudge. So we do use Nudge for that with that. Now, Apple Silicon will require the owner, the volume owner, to put in there, but you don't have to be an admin for that. On that.
As a CISO, Jeremy, do you care more about all security events getting fed into one report or dashboard, or all security events coming from one security product?
That's a good question. I think it's more getting all the data into a singular source so it's easier to consume. One of the things that Todd's really excelled at in what he's been doing on the IT side is I don't have to talk to Todd very often anymore because he sends all the alerts in there that I'm going to be asking him questions about. So it really helps me, and I can also feel a little more educated when I go to talk to Todd about specific things. And it's just really I think it's more of a personal preference type of thing. I know other CISOs who are the complete opposite and would rather have, a single tool.
How do you track the reasoning for your standard users to elevate to admin?
The what?
How do you track the reasoning for your standard users to elevate to admin?
They would need to put in a ticket through our service desk, and it's up to their manager whether they approve that ticket or not. So if the manager approves it, then we go ahead and allow them to use the elevate command, and then whenever an account is elevated to admin or an admin account is created, some of our background security agents then start feeding data a lot more heavily into their whatever Jeremy's team tracks.
Are you able?
And we've had a couple where we've had to, hey, don't do that, and that's.
Yes, people like to push it with that temporary elevate. We had one person who thought they were being clever to see if we would catch them and decided to try and create an admin account. And of course, not only did Todd's stuff catch it, but all of my security agents also caught it, and that set off a big fun conversation with that person is, what were you really thinking on doing there?
Air quote that fun.
Are you able to restrict the cast users can install in HomeBrew?
Sort of. If the cask itself requires additional. If you look at something like Docker, which when you run the cask install of Docker, it actually needs to run 3 or 4 separate commands We could certainly not allow those commands to run. We could not put those into our sudoers file, and then they would just not work. So that would be, I think, probably the best way to, because we don't really block anything per se from within HomeBrew. Just
Yeah, for us, not everybody at the company has HomeBrew. They actually have to be a developer or somebody with a real use case. So, you know, if you're in sales or something, you can't just install HomeBrew and then start installing everything under the sun in there. So it is still a little bit locked down as well.
and our sudoers is pretty restricted to you can do these certain things, and that's really just about all you can do.
Yep.
Do you have Gatekeeper turned on fully without the override option? How do you handle requested untrusted software?
It would again come down to, we have some software that we are allowing with Gatekeeper, that we have a policy that says, you know, these, it's okay for these 2 or 3. But for the most part, if somebody came to me and said, I can't get this software to run that I installed through HomeBrew, first of all, I would point them to our approved software list and ask why they're installing that, because it's probably not on our approved software list. And if that's the case, they would need to go through and request approval. And then if Jeremy's team approves it, we would then put things in place to allow it. But I can't think of a situation where that's come up yet.
What are you using as your brew install and self-service? There are a few scripts on GitHub that we've not had success using.
It's custom. I know that I wrote it right after I started. I was one of the first Apple Silicon users, so I had to figure out how to make Apple Silicon Macs run with Brew and with not. It's mostly the standard, but there are some custom pieces of it to get things, because for some reason Brew says it needs command line tools, but then it will just skip them for no reason. So I do package that. I do package command line tools and install that first before Brew runs to install.
How do you determine which user type has standard or admin access?
Pretty much all users are standard users. There are, I can think of a handful that have admin access all the time, and I'm not one of them. I don't run as admin. So I want the same user experience that everybody else is getting. Jeremy, you have it. Yeah, I can think of a handful. That's it. And that's just because he breaks his computer all day.
All the time.
And this is more just a question to verify what you had said, but did you say that you use CIS, CAT for hardening?
The CIS benchmarks, level 1 on those, and then we also use the macOS Security Compliance Project as baselines for other things that aren't covered by CIS.
And if you guys have a security team at your company, the security team may have access within their security tool set to do policy scanning. The vast majority of tools, Rapid7, Nessus, you name it, all have CIS, disastigs, and related frameworks that you can scan your systems against.
Okay, final question on here. What is an example of a webhook catcher?
It's for us. We don't use Slack. We have Rocket Chat, and so within Rocket Chat, it's
an API endpoint listener essentially that has JavaScript running that parses the JSON that's being fed into it and then spits it out in the pretty little picture that you saw in our alerts room. And that's really all it is I think it's 8 lines of code.
If it works.
Sometimes it works.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes you spend 3 days and you're like, well, this isn't going to work.
Well, so that's all the questions on here. Anyone else have a question in the room?
What if the user reboots after they elevate? Does it end up taking the admin rights after they log in again?
Well, it's a launch daemon that's
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. So the question is, what if a user reboots after they've elevated? if it's still within that 10-minute time period, that launch daemon's still there. It doesn't go away. So it's, if it takes them 4 minutes to reboot, that's just 4 minutes off their elevate time. But honestly, I think 10 minutes is usually too long for most users. The reason that I do that is on occasion there is some software that will require you to configure something and then install something else, and then I guess if you're really slow, I don't know, like you walk away like, I'm gonna go drink a cup of coffee and then come back and install this software. Maybe that's it, or you forget to hit the next, but.
User into the self-service policy to allow them to see the enable admin. So then you have to go back after and remove them so that it doesn't show up within self-service still?
No, so the question is, how does the computer or user get dropped from that policy so they don't see it again? So as soon as that policy runs, the first thing that happens is an API call goes out to Jamf Pro that says, take this computer out of that group. So it's a static group, so you just run that, and it pulls the user out of that group, or computer, because it's computer-based, and then they can't. So they can't just click it a bunch of times, or click it, and then 2 minutes later go back and click it, and that, nope, thought of that. Yes?
The software that you're requiring this for, does it have to be installed by the end user? You can't do this installation of
The software that we're requiring for,
when people are requesting elevated privileges
Mhm.
or to install something. You can't.
to install or configure. It's probably more on the configure side. We saw it a lot more. The question is, do you really need to, can't you just install the software through self-service or just push it down to them as opposed to elevating them? And it's more, where we saw it the most was with Docker, I would say, and I'm not trying to knock on, Docker's a great program. I'm not trying to throw them under the bus here, but we saw it a lot with Docker where there were just some configuration tools that we hadn't added into our sudoers file yet. So it's one of those, if IT doesn't know what's going on, we can't fix it. So once we were able to, work with someone, it's not generally the case anymore. But the configuration of Docker after install, or another example is if for some reason someone tries to run the Xcode license agreement before they've actually installed Xcode, because they're in the group that says you can install Xcode, click on the wrong thing, it fails, says Xcode's not there. Now what do you do? Well, if I'm not there, then sometimes somebody will go through and not flush that policy or elevate them. We don't see it very often. So the elevate option, I would say we probably use it maybe once or twice a month, if that at all. So it's not something that's generally used. It's just, if it is used, I want to know about it, because that way I can track it.
And a lot of the software we're allowing them to install through Brew 2 is on the development side, where it's tons of libraries, where they could have 4 or 5 updates in a week, and then that's just adding more overhead to Todd and his real small team. And that's kind of that happy medium that we try to deal with.
No, so the question is how many often can a user elevate? If a user requests elevate and it's approved by their manager, they're granted the one-time use. The first thing that happens after they click elevate is they're removed from the group that allows them to elevate. So we put them in a static group, they click the button, the first part of that script is take them out of that group. And then it actually goes through and elevates them. Then there's other problems that we need to talk to them about, because if they're needing multiple elevations in a day, they're not following our policies and procedures.
Okay, I had one more pop-up on here
Okay.
too. Does your revoke daemon pop up the new Ventura notice about a background item?
No, because I've actually whitelisted it in the login item, so it will see that it's okay to be there. At least it hasn't that I've seen, not that I've seen, but it is on our allowed list of things to pop up. Plus, we don't like alerts. If you watch last year's session, you'll see that we don't want our users getting a bunch of alerts and pop-ups and notifications, so we try and block as many of those as we can.
Okay, anything else?
We're done.
Awesome.
We did it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.